Hello and welcome to the Realizing Resilience podcast brought to you by Reimagined Roots. The weather is warming. We are 2 days away from the first day of April, and I am thinking about what to plant in my veggie garden this year. I'm a little behind, as is usually the case, and I'm sure most gardeners can relate that time crunch where you have all winter to plan your veggie garden, and then all of a sudden it's time to plant it, and you haven't started yet. And it's one of those most important lessons I have found myself with gardening is planning. Like, in order to have a successful vegetable garden, you really need to plan ahead. And so that's going to be the theme of this podcast, just in general, the lessons that we can learn from gardening and really the time scale of planning and success. And this relates to so many different things. There's a lot of analogies to business and finances and relationships in life. But that concept of thinking ahead, planning ahead, and delaying your gratification to see that result, which, again, there's no better teacher than Mother Nature when it comes to delayed gratification. And so, on the theme of resilience and just vegetable gardening in general, I want to start off by allowing people to sit with for a second and to think about where our food comes from. I know that's a big ask, that's a big question, but seriously, I don't think that we take the time necessary to really appreciate where our current supply chain and food system originates from. And it's remarkable when we think about it. The feat of human ingenuity to create these supply chains from international global trade and utilizing the climates in different countries where certain crops grow best, and the economy and the marketing and the financial kind of backing that comes with this trillion-dollar industry that is the most important thing to humanity is where does our food come from and how do we feed the world? And with so much hunger in the world and the disproportionate allocation of those resources and the waste. The waste alone, like this entire industry, there's so many different areas that you could zoom into and analyze and identify either failure points or just incredible inefficiencies. And as a mechanical engineer, really when I approach landscape design and just business and life in general, I'm always looking at how do I make this more efficient? How do I fix this broken system or improve this existing inefficient system? And trying to really logically box these things in and zoom in, narrow the focus, zoom in, narrow the focus, and make it digestible. Because otherwise, it's entirely intimidating and overwhelming to think, how are we going to fix the food system across the entire planet? But the reality is, it comes down to what you have control over and how important it is to you. And so understanding the why, of course, is like the driving factor. So I do encourage everybody to take a moment to think about every meal that you eat, where this came from, what factory it went through, who was the farmer who harvested that. Was it an autonomous multi-million-dollar huge combine driving through a field of 1 million acres of wheat that was sprayed with glyphosate in order to desiccate that wheat while it was still in the ground? And what is the soil health of that place? What is the process afterwards? They take it from that field and they put it into a factory and they grind it and they sterilize it and they bleach it, and that's the pasta you're eating, or that's the bread that you're eating. And again, I don't want it to be overwhelming. I don't want it to be paralyzing. But the alternative is when you buy from a local farmer's market and you're eating those vegetables and, you have the lettuce on your salad and you're thinking, where did this come from? And you can quite clearly envision, the farmer's face. If you know the guy, you go to the farmer's market and you buy that food. To think about, like, I know this guy and I know that he's farming with organic, if not regenerative, best practices and doing his best to preserve soil health and holistically manage his farm to help support all the living things that exist within that farm. And what that does for us psychologically, I think can change the world. What that can do for us physiologically on like a microbiome level, we have these relationships with these bacteria and these fungi in the soil that science is really just scratching the surface. Like we haven't really figured it out, but there is an energetic connection that we have with our food, and it's so important. And I think that getting our food locally, to knowing the guy who farmed it, to supporting your local economy, just the benefits outweigh the cons. You pay a couple of extra dollars per pound. That's okay. It's okay. It's worth it. Please let me tell you, it is worth it. And then the convenience factor. That's the other big thing, right? I mean, it's just so hard to go to the farmer's market, which is an extra 20 minutes away, instead of going to the grocery store around the corner. I get it, believe me, and we can give ourselves grace. I'm not perfect. I don't think anybody is. But boy, if we could just do a little bit, just all of us, a little bit more to help support our local ecology, our local farmers, our local biome, ourselves, our psychological well-being, our physiological well-being, all of these things are so important, especially nutrient density wise, right? I mean, again, there's so many topics to discuss in this industry, but the nutrient density of our food has declined exponentially since the use of chemicals and modern machinery. Just the agricultural revolution has taken away a lot of the nutrient density because it's only been focused on growing the most amount of volume and the most weight of food. So farmers have optimized how to get the most pounds of produce per every acre. And in doing so, we've pumped the soil with petroleum-based artificial nutrients, mostly nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, which has overlooked the micronutrients, the vitamins that we're supposed to be getting from our vegetables are dramatically less than they ever used to be. And so that's really important as well. Because that nourishing effect, I mean, you might have to eat, I think, whatever the statistic was, they said you have to eat 10 oranges to get the same amount of vitamin C that you used to with one, only 50, 60 years ago. Because that's another fold in this incredibly complicated industry is the timeline. Like, it hasn't been that long since industrial agriculture changed the face of this planet. Like, within one generation, within one lifetime, everything has changed, and we haven't really observed the repercussions of that yet. Deep. You can go deep into this subject. So what can we do about it, right? And that's like the most important thing to me is like empowering people to say, okay, there's a lot of large, intimidating problems in the world, and there's nothing I can do about it. With almost every problem in the world, we can all plant a garden. We can find a way to, whether it's on a balcony, on an apartment, in a small porch, or a community garden. If you don't have a property yourself, we're mostly focused on suburbia, right? I just drive through suburban neighborhoods and think about the cookie cutter golf course grass lawn, and I think that is where we can have the most impact. I truly envision a world where every suburban yard is a Garden of Eden, full of food, medicine, native plants, supporting our local ecology, just teeming with life, buzzing and sensational garden spaces. I mean, the colors, the smells. When you walk into a space and you're surrounded by the buzzing of bees, the chirping of grasshoppers, the fireflies at night, the diversity of birds, like that ecosystem, that web that we are supposed to be well integrated with. And instead, you have a sterile lawn, where I think that that's really damaging there's something at a soul level, at a vibrational energy level that is really taking away from our role on this planet. And I've said it before, but I do think that we are supposed to be the gardeners of this garden planet as the conscious species that has the ability to completely change the face of the planet. Like for us to be the stewards of this planet is so, so important. So we got to start a garden. And you don't have to go crazy, but that delayed gratification element is, again, another one of those things that is so important to set your expectations appropriately, because gardening, while it's simple, it's not easy. And most of the difficulty comes from planning ahead. In order to have a successful garden, you have to pick your seeds and start your indoor seedlings months ahead of time, in the dead of winter, well before your gut intuition thinks, well, it's time to start a garden. I need to start planning. But there are different levels of gardening. And I would say, first and foremost, everybody can start just by buying starts from a local nursery. Find a local greenhouse, local nursery who has your tomatoes and eggplants and lettuces. And you don't even have to start until Memorial Day. Around here, in central Massachusetts, so that zone 6A, 6B, we can you can just have your raised bed, and I recommend a raised bed so that you're starting with a brand new perfect soil blend. You don't have to try to amend your existing soils. You don't have to even do a soil test. You just start clean, fresh with a raised bed, and then buy your vegetable starts. And then that's a great way, follow the square foot gardening methodology is a great way of just like simple, get started, get plants in the ground, understand the relationships between plants. You don't have to go crazy with companion planting, but just get a sense of what plants thrive well near others. And most importantly, set yourself up for success so that you don't get discouraged the first year you try to garden. Because that's so common, and people label themselves and say, I just have a brown thumb. And, I always like to push back on that. It's a skill that you have to learn. And so you're not going to say, oh, I'm just, not good at riding bikes the first time you try to ride a bike and you fall off. It's like, it takes persistence and it takes commitment. And it takes a why. Why do you want to garden? Why do you want to ride a bike, right? Because it's just, there are social pressures, there are personal goals and pressures, but remember what that is and anchor into it. And for me, gardening is like the most important thing. I mean, to be able to take control of your own life and sustain yourself and not be a victim of supply chain disruptions or these larger global issues. I mean, there's so much like practically, and there's so much spiritually, where it's like, I want to plant the seed and watch it grow to witness God's miracle of what it means to grow a plant and to be a steward of a seedling and to watch it grow into maturity. And then to eat that fruit after months and months of tender care and conscious attention to a living thing is like a beautiful, beautiful thing that I think the world needs now more than ever. And again, there's so much depth, so many different areas to focus on, but I think this is it, just getting your garden started. And I don't want this podcast to be a gardening 101 kind of class. I think that there's plenty of YouTube videos and resources out there to say how to start a garden. But my recommendation is first and foremost, get a raised bed, ideally made of cedar. Doesn't have to be super tall. You need at least 6 inches, 2x6 box. Get a nice, high-quality, organic compost blend, a planting blend. Sometimes it's like a 50-50 loam compost mix. Square foot gardening, I recommend 1/3 peat moss or coco coir, their equivalent. They both have their own issues, but coco coir, 1 part perlite, and 1 part high-quality compost. Ideally, that compost comes from 3 different sources. Again, there's layers of complexity. Just getting started is the most important thing. From there, square foot gardening method, check it out. You Google that, there's tons and tons of resources on it. Find local seedlings starts from a nursery, and then you can also direct sow, learn about direct sowing, like the quick hit, highly gratifying crops such as radishes are like an easy one, but know those crops, start to study. It takes years and years to become a proficient gardener, because then the next year, now maybe you try to start your own seedlings inside. And so now you get your shelves and a grow light set up in your garage or a spare room where you can start growing your seedlings indoors so you don't have to buy the starts. is one level, and then you can start companion planting with more intention and going even deeper into that realm. And then you can start even succession sowing. And so once you harvest a crop, planning ahead so that you have your seedlings started a few weeks before you're harvesting your first round of lettuce, so that then you can re-sow that lettuce and get continual harvests throughout the seasons. And that's like one of the most important ways of maximizing your produce out of your garden. And it takes more planning and effort. And so again, this concept of planning ahead is everything in gardening. And it was easy when humanity had to rely on that planning to survive. If they didn't plan ahead, then you did not survive. And that's a very real thing that's like hardwired into our DNA as human beings. And so we have the ability. Don't discourage yourself. Know that it just takes some conscious effort, and it's about shutting out the distractions of the world so that you can focus on these kinds of things. And then irrigation is like the other most important thing. I would say irrigation and fencing. Nothing is more discouraging than waking up in the morning, halfway through the season, and your entire vegetable garden has been mowed down to the ground by groundhogs. So build your raised bed, build a fence around that raised bed, 4 feet tall, use hardware cloth, don't use chicken wire, don't use welded wire. It's worth the investment. Fencing is one of those things where it's like not the sexiest part of the job, but it's one of the most expensive and one of the most important. Don't skimp on your fencing. You can either fence the garden bed itself, or you can go out a few feet and have more of like a walk-in potager style garden. And then irrigation. Even if it's just a hose bib on a timer, ideally it's drip irrigation. Buying a roll of drip irrigation tubing and winding it through your garden beds, putting it on a timer is simple. It's a very easy thing. You do it first thing in the spring, and then you're all set for the whole year. Set it on a timer. Do your research, know what crops need what moisture, make sure you're not overwatering is like more important than underwatering. But raised bed, proper soil, fencing, irrigation, organic vegetable starts from your local nursery, you're set up for success. It's hard to mess it up when you have that infrastructure in place. And that's what Reimagined Roots specializes in, is building the infrastructure, consulting with you, getting a sense of how much do you really want to grow? Are you trying to you never go to the grocery store again? Is a much different conversation than more of a cute, like, oh, I just want to grow some tomatoes, or I want to teach my son. Maybe you have a toddler, and nothing brings me more joy than seeing a toddler pull a carrot from a garden that they grew. And they normally hate carrots, but when they pull it out of the ground and you rub it off, and you don't wash it off and scrub it and get every little speck of dirt off, let them eat a little dirt. It's important for our microbiomes, and he'll probably love it. The flavor, the texture. Kids have a much more sensitive flavor profile than we do. They know what nutrients they need, and when they eat a vegetable that is full of nutrients, they enjoy it much more than trying to force feed them vegetables that are devoid of nutrients because they've been frozen for 6 months and shipped around the country and grown in nutrient poor soil. Oh, so I love this. I think it's, again, so important. I encourage everybody to go out, start a garden, start small, doesn't take much, but commit and set your expectations appropriately. It's going to take 5 years of gardening, because you know what it is? You don't know if you did something right or wrong until 9 months later, for the most part. It takes a full season of lessons that you have to document pretty well. You have to remember, what did I do and when? Did it work or not? What am I going to do differently next year? And that is the core point of this message today, is planning ahead and thinking through, what lessons am I learning in this phase of life, in my relationship, that I can learn from today, apply those lessons to my life and become better tomorrow. In business, in finances, taking a step back, analyzing what's working, what isn't, what can I do better, and implementing those lessons so that you succeed in every day and every way. You're getting better and better as a person, as a partner, as a father, as a business owner, or as a gardener. these are my lessons for you today. Plan ahead, take your time, delay your gratification, set your expectations, and start a damn garden.